All right, so let's dive into global healthcare private equity
Okay.
trends in 2024.
Sounds good.
And we're going to base this all on the Global Healthcare Private Equity Report 2025 from Bain Company.
Excellent source.
Yeah, they always have some great information there.
Absolutely.
So are you ready to unpack this?
I think the numbers are pretty surprising given the economic climate we've had.
Yeah, well, they estimate that global healthcare private equity reached $115 billion
Wow.
in 2024.
Yeah,
That's the second highest deal value ever.
it is.
So very interesting.
Yeah, and especially considering, we've had sort of a more challenging economic environment than we've had in recent years.
Right.
So it just shows you that healthcare innovation is something that investors are really doubling down on.
Absolutely. And I mean, what's really driving this momentum, I think we're seeing a surge in these mega deals
We are.
with 5 transactions exceeding $5 billion.
That's right. 5 deals over 5 billion.
Yeah,
It's a lot.
that's incredible. And speaking of mega deals, do you remember Zealous?
Yes, vaguely.
Okay, so that's the payments platform owned by Bain Capital and Parthenon Capital.
Okay, yeah.
They just brought in a whole bunch of new investors.
They did. And what's interesting is the report actually suggests that this year could have been even more record-breaking if the terms of that Zealous deal had been made public.
Wow. So are we seeing like a lot more of these massive private deals kind of happening under the radar?
It's certainly a possibility.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So North America is really the one that's dominating this whole thing. They're claiming 65% of the global deal value.
Yeah, they are. But Europe's no slouch. They're coming in second at 22%.
Okay, so strong interest across the board, but where is all of this money going?
So one really hot area is biopharma.
Okay.
And that actually led the pack this year in terms of deal value.
Wow.
A good example is GI Partners' investment in eClinical Solutions.
You okay?
They're essentially providing the tech infrastructure for faster, more efficient clinical trials for new drugs.
Oh, so they're kind of like the picks and shovels of the gold rush.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then you have Novo Holdings buying Catalent, which is huge for manufacturing those GLP-1 therapies everybody's talking about these days.
Right, and I think this shows that investors are being very strategic in where they place their money.
Absolutely.
hmm
Are all regions kind of focusing on the same areas of healthcare?
Well, that's what's interesting is no, they're not.
Okay.
The report highlights some regional differences.
Okay.
And, in North America,
Yeah.
they're very focused on what's called derivative services.
Derivative services, what is that?
So these are the businesses that actually support healthcare providers.
Oh, okay.
So think staffing supply distribution lab services.
Okay, so all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in Asia Pacific, it's a different picture.
What's going on over there?
They're focused on hospital chains, clinics, senior living facilities.
Wow. So very different.
Very different. Yeah.
That's fascinating. Now, speaking of contrasts,
Yeah.
the report talks about mid-market healthcare private equity funds.
Go right.
And these are the funds that manage, say, somewhere between $500 million to $4 billion.
Yeah.
And they're outperforming the larger firms.
They are. And they're doing it because they're more agile and focused.
Oh, so the bigger firms are having a little bit of trouble adapting to the market?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
The mid-market funds have maintained their deal activity,
So they can kind of move more quickly?
Yeah, they're not bogged down by the complex internal processes.
Okay.
So Webster Equity Partners exiting Retina Consultants of America.
Yeah.
Small fund, big impact.
Yeah, so it's not always about the size.
No, not at all.
Very interesting. Now, let's talk about carve-outs.
Okay.
This is another big trend that's shaping this whole landscape.
Yeah, carve-outs are when you have a big company that decides to shed part of its business,
Okay.
a division that's maybe not growing as fast as they'd like,
Right.
and private equity firms come in and revitalize those carved-out businesses.
Right. So 2024, a lot of companies trying to improve their shareholder value.
Yeah.
This seems like a perfect way to do it.
Yeah.
You're buying a promising but neglected business
Yeah.
and then turning it into something great.
It's a win-win.
Yeah, win-win for sure. Now, what happens once a private equity firm has kind of like fixed up the business and revitalized it? How do they exit their investment?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Because it's not as easy as it used to be.
Yeah.
Higher interest rates are playing a role.
Okay.
And expectations between buyers and sellers are often misaligned.
So it's a lot harder to find buyers willing to pay top dollar.
Yeah, and private equity firms can't rely on what we call multiple expansion,
Multiple expansion.
which is that automatic boost in valuation
Got it.
that we saw a lot of in previous years.
So you can't just buy a business,
Yeah.
hold it for a few years, and expect it to go up in value just because the market's going up.
Nope. Not
Yeah.
anymore.
Okay.
You got to prove that you've actually done something, you've created value in the business.
So you've got to really show that you've made it a better business.
Exactly.
Okay, so like prepping for a really tough job interview for your assets.
I like that analogy, yeah.
Now let's shift gears and head over to the Asia-Pacific region.
Okay.
The report talks about some fascinating trends there.
Yeah, it's a very dynamic region.
Okay.
And we're seeing a slowdown in China.
Okay.
But overall, private equity investment is diversifying.
Okay.
And India is the new hotspot.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Their economy is booming, and the demand for healthcare is just through the roof.
Yeah. And they accounted for 26% of the regional deal volume in 2024.
Wow.
So they're becoming a major player
They are.
globally.
Yeah, and it's not just in Japan and South Korea are also seeing growth.
Yeah, driven by aging populations and just some attractive investment conditions.
So it's really interesting to see how things are shifting around the world.
It is.
So we've covered record deal values,
Yeah.
the rise of these mid-market funds, the whole complexity of carve-outs. We got a little glimpse of what's going on in Asia Pacific.
Yeah.
That.
But we're just getting started.
We are stay tuned for more.
All right. So we saw in the last part that mid-market firms are really doing well in the healthcare private equity space.
Yeah, they are.
But what exactly are they doing to get those impressive results?
It's less about a secret sauce and more about really understanding how to add value in all the different segments of healthcare.
Okay.
You know, they're not just buying and building, they're being much more strategic and hands-on.
Okay, so walk me through this. How are they approaching value creation in, like, physician practices, for example?
Sure. So instead of just focusing on, adding more doctors or opening more locations,
Yeah.
they're really pushing practices to expand into what we call ancillary services.
Ancillary services. What exactly is that?
So think of it like a cardiology practice that also sets up an ambulatory surgery center.
Oh, okay.
Or an orthopedics group that brings in radiology services.
So it's about creating a more complete healthcare ecosystem for patients.
Exactly. It's not just about treating people when they're sick.
Right.
It's about offering a whole suite of services to help keep them healthy.
Right. And I imagine from a business perspective, that makes a lot of sense.
It does.
Creates new revenue streams for the practice.
Absolutely. And that's good for everybody, the practice and the investors.
It sounds like they're doing more than just encouraging expansion, though.
Right.
What about operational improvements?
That's another big focus.
Okay.
They're helping these practices streamline their operations
Okay.
by, centralizing things like billing and procurement
Right.
and IT systems.
So making the back end more efficient so the doctors and nurses can really focus on what they do best, which is patient care.
Exactly. And there's another big shift happening in healthcare in general that these firms are embracing,
Okay.
which is value-based care.
Okay, I've heard that term, but can you remind me what that means?
Sure. So value-based care is about rewarding healthcare providers for keeping patients healthy,
Okay.
not just for, doing a bunch of procedures.
Okay, so not fee for service, it's more holistic. It's exactly a big shift away from that fee for service model.
So instead of getting paid for every office visit or procedure, the focus is on keeping patients out of the hospital in the first place.
That's the idea.
Yeah, that's great.
And these mid-market firms are really figuring out how to make this new model work.
Okay, how are they doing that?
Well, they're helping practices implement the right technology and processes
Okay.
so that they can track patient outcomes and really show the value that they're providing,
Okay,
you know?
that's fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
It really sounds like these firms are becoming experts in the nuances of healthcare.
They are.
Yeah.
And that expertise extends to other areas of healthcare, too,
Okay.
like contract research organizations.
CROs.
Yeah, CROs and their manufacturing counterparts and the CDMOs.
Okay, so the companies that help develop and produce new drugs and therapies.
Exactly, the ones running the clinical trials and making the drugs.
So in this space, what are these mid-market firms doing that's different?
Well, they're really encouraging these companies to build additional capacity, whether that's adding new product categories or investing in some of the cutting-edge technologies.
So making sure that these companies can keep up with all of the rapid changes in the pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah, they need to stay competitive and be able to bring those new therapies to market.
Right. And then we have healthcare IT,
Right?
another booming sector.
Yeah.
Where these mid-market firms are playing a pretty big role.
Absolutely.
What are they doing there?
So it's all about pushing for scale and encouraging those companies to invest in new capabilities.
Okay.
Helping them centralize their infrastructure,
Okay.
which can really help reduce tech debt in the future.
So it's not just about getting bigger, it's about getting smarter as to grow.
thinking long-term and strategically,
Yeah.
not just throwing money at the problem,
Yeah.
bringing their understanding of the healthcare industry to bear.
Okay. And that seems to be really important,
Yeah.
especially given the challenges that we were talking about earlier with exiting investments.
Hmm.
The higher interest rates and the misaligned expectations.
Yeah.
It's harder for firms to sell their assets now.
It is definitely a more challenging exit environment.
Okay. And that requires a real shift in mindset
For sellers.
for sellers.
Okay.
How so?
They can't just rely on the market to deliver those high valuations anymore.
Yep.
They have to really show what they've done,
Yeah.
demonstrate the value that they've created while they've owned that business.
Yeah, so it's like getting ready for a job interview, but for your company.
Exactly.
So you can't just show up and expect to wow potential buyers.
Right. Buyers are looking at things much more carefully now.
Okay.
They want to see proof.
So what can sellers do to stand out?
So the report talks about 3 key areas to focus on.
Okay, what are those?
First, you got to be able to show exactly how your actions have led to value creation.
Okay.
So if you implemented a new pricing strategy,
Yeah.
show how that led to higher revenue.
Right.
Don't just say it, prove it
Yeah.
with data.
Hard number.
Exactly. And second, you need to really paint a clear picture of the future growth potential of that business.
Okay, so show them there's still room to run.
Exactly. Highlight that runway ahead and outline a plan for how the next owner can capture that value.
Okay, and the third thing?
Third thing is you got to provide reasons to believe in
Okay.
your story,
Don't just make promises.
right? Back it up with evidence.
So if you say that you've built a great management team,
Yeah,
show me what they've accomplished.
exactly.
Okay, so really build that credibility.
Yeah, it's about building trust.
And trust. Okay.
Buyers need to feel confident
Yeah.
that the story they're hearing is real.
So it's a much more data-driven, evidence-based approach
It
to
is.
selling now
Absolutely.
than it used to be?
Absolutely critical in this market.
Okay.
Not enough to just say, trust me.
Yeah.
You got to show them.
And it seems like that focus on demonstrating value isn't just for the sellers.
No.
Are you saying buyers are getting more strategic as well?
Oh, absolutely. They're increasingly integrating these value creation principles, into their due diligence process.
So they're not just looking at the financials anymore.
Not at all. They want to understand what's really driving that value.
So they're digging deeper.
They're asking tougher questions.
Yeah, what kind of questions are they asking?
You want to know, okay, what are the specific initiatives
Yes.
that are going to drive revenue growth?
Okay.
How can we optimize operations to boost profitability?
Okay.
What are the risks and opportunities that
Yeah.
these new technologies present?
Okay.
So taking it in a much more holistic view.
So both buyers and sellers are really up in their game here.
They are.
They're recognizing that to be successful in healthcare private equity,
Yeah,
you need more than just financial acumen.
absolutely.
Yeah.
You need deep industry knowledge,
Right.
a keen eye for opportunity,
Yeah.
and that relentless focus
Yeah.
on creating value.
So speaking of opportunities,
Right.
I'm really curious to dive deeper into what's happening in the Asia-Pacific region. We touched on it briefly earlier,
Yeah.
but there's a lot to unpack there.
The Asia-Pacific region is full of exciting trends
Okay.
that are really reshaping the global healthcare investment landscape.
Okay.
And I think you'll find the rise of India particularly fascinating.
All right, well, lead the way. So we're heading over to the Asia-Pacific to kind of wrap up our deep dive into global healthcare private equity.
Right.
This region is attracting a lot of attention from investors all over the world.
It is, and the report really highlights that dynamic picture. It's not just about China anymore.
Right.
While China is still important, we're seeing diversification across the whole region,
Okay.
with India, Japan, South Korea all emerging as really interesting hotspots for healthcare investment.
So let's start with India.
Okay.
We talked about it briefly earlier.
Yeah.
But the report highlights some pretty impressive growth projections.
Yeah, they're projecting healthcare spending in India to hit $320 billion
Wow.
by 2028.
That's a massive market.
It is huge potential, and private equity firms are taking notice.
Yeah, they are. The report mentions that India actually became the largest healthcare private equity market
Right.
in the region by volume in 2024.
Yeah, 26% of total deal activity.
Wow.
So they're becoming a global powerhouse.
Yeah, so what's fueling all of this investment?
Well, it's partly the size of the market, of course.
Right.
But there's more to it than that.
Yeah.
India has a rapidly expanding middle class,
Okay.
which is driving demand for quality healthcare services.
Okay.
And their economy is growing at a much faster rate than many other countries.
Right.
So that makes them very attractive to investors.
Okay, so it's a growing market, favorable economic environment. But are investors actually seeing returns in India?
They are. We're seeing some pretty impressive exits.
Okay, like what?
Well, Advent International recently sold their stake in BSV Group,
Okay.
Mankind Pharma, for $1.6 billion.
Wow.
So that's a pretty big win.
1.6 billion. That's a lot of money.
It is, and it validates India's appeal.
Yeah, so where are all these investments going in India?
Okay.
What areas of healthcare are attracting the most attention?
So provider and related services is a big focus.
Okay.
Hospitals, clinics, all those businesses that support providers,
Yeah.
they're attracting significant capital.
Okay. Like what have we seen?
Well, Morgan Stanley, for example, acquired a minority stake
Okay.
in the Hyderabad Institute of Oncology.
Okay. And we've got Blackstone kind of doing their classic buy and build strategy with care hospitals.
Exactly. They're planning multiple tuck-in acquisitions to create a much larger healthcare network.
So they're consolidating the market.
Exactly.
Very interesting. And it's not just about traditional providers.
Yeah.
We've got Advent International investing in Apollo Hospital Enterprises digital health platform.
Yeah, Apollo 24/7.
So they're betting on telehealth and digital healthcare solutions.
Right. It's a big trend.
It is. So they're kind of covering all their bases in India,
They are, yeah.
targeting the traditional system and these new digital platforms.
Yeah, and it's not just providers in digital health.
Okay.
Investors are also looking at biopharma
Okay.
with a focus on CDMOs,
CDMOs.
contract development and manufacturing organizations, CMOs, and generic pharma manufacturers.
Okay, so they're investing across the entire healthcare value chain.
Yeah, from drug development to manufacturing to patient care.
So a lot of opportunities.
A lot of opportunities. India is a fascinating market to watch.
It is. Now, what about Japan?
Okay.
The report mentioned this resurgence
Yeah.
in healthcare, private equity investment there,
Right.
after things have been pretty quiet for a while.
Yeah, well, Japan is going through this massive demographic shift.
Okay.
With a rapidly aging population.
Yeah.
You know, nearly 30% of their population is 65 or older,
Wow.
and about 10% are over 80.
That's a lot of people.
It's creating a huge demand for healthcare and senior care services.
Yeah, and Japan has always been known for pharmaceutical innovation.
That's right.
So that must be another draw.
Absolutely. They're looking for opportunities in biopharma and related services.
Okay.
And recent regulatory changes have made it easier for private equity firms to invest.
Oh, how so?
Well, they've revised their M&A code,
Okay.
which has opened up more opportunities for carve-outs and privatizations.
So Japan's becoming more welcoming to private equity in healthcare.
I think so. They're recognizing the value that these firms can bring.
Yeah, not just the money, but the expertise.
Exactly. Like J-Star's investment in Caregiver Japan,
Okay.
a company that operates nursing homes and provides home care services.
So it's kind of aligning with what society needs,
Yeah.
addressing those challenges of an aging population.
Your win-win.
Win-win. Okay, so India, Japan. Let's wrap things up with South Korea.
Okay.
The report highlighted them as a major hub for medtech investments.
Yeah. South Korea is emerging as a real leader in medtech.
Okay.
Their share of regional deal value actually surged to 26% in 2024.
Wow, that's a big jump.
Yeah, it's a big jump.
So what's driving that? Is it similar to what's happening in Japan?
There are some similarities.
Yeah, okay.
South Korea also has an aging population
Right.
and rising healthcare costs.
Uh-huh.
But they've also made some regulatory reforms specifically to attract foreign investment,
Okay.
particularly in medtech.
So they're really trying to bring those medtech investors in.
They are, and it's working.
Okay.
A lot of South Korean medtech companies
Yeah.
are developing really innovative products and technologies.
Okay, with global potential.
Yeah, they're really strong in areas like aesthetic skincare and dental health.
Okay, so can you give me an example?
Sure. So Arkaimed, a European private equity firm,
Okay.
recently acquired GZ's Medical,
Okay.
a South Korean maker of aesthetic devices.
Mhm.
So they're tapping into that growing global market
Right.
for non-invasive cosmetic procedures.
So South Korea is really carving out a niche
They are.
for itself in global medtech.
And private equity firms are fueling that growth.
Yeah, for sure.
Another good example is MDK Partners' acquisition of Geo Young,
Okay.
a pharmaceutical wholesaler that serves pharmacies, hospitals, and med tech companies.
So they're not just investing in the med tech companies, they're investing in the companies that support them as well.
Exactly, taking a really strategic approach.
It's amazing to see how every country in this region is kind of finding its own path
It is.
within this global healthcare private equity landscape.
Yeah, you've got India becoming a powerhouse in provider services and biopharma.
Yeah.
Japan attracting investments in senior care and pharmaceutical innovation,
Right.
and South Korea emerging as this medtech hub.
It's incredible.
Yeah, and it's not just those three countries.
Yeah.
You know, China's becoming a hotbed for strategic carve-outs.
Okay.
Southeast Asia is seeing some really lucrative exit opportunities.
Okay.
And Australia is still a strong market for healthcare infrastructure investments.
It's a diverse region full of opportunity.
A lot of opportunities.
All right, so as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the key takeaways you hope our listener will walk away with?
Well, I think the big takeaway is that the global healthcare private equity landscape is constantly evolving.
Yeah.
We're seeing record deal values, the rise of these mid-market funds,
Oh.
the growing importance of value creation, and this fascinating shift in focus towards the Asia-Pacific region.
Right, and it's all happening against this backdrop of, economic uncertainty
Exactly.
and shifting regulations.
Right.
So it's a really dynamic and exciting space
It is.
to watch.
Yeah.
I completely agree. This deep dive has been so insightful.
I'm glad.
It's amazing to see how private equity is not just about financial returns. It's about driving innovation in addressing these critical needs
Absolutely.
in healthcare systems all over the world.
Well said. I think that's a great way to sum it up.
Well, thank you so much for guiding us through this fascinating exploration.
My pleasure.
And thank you to our listeners for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it informative and thought-provoking. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep